They made me train my own replacement 6 months ago. My boss handed me a folder and told me to train the woman who was replacing me. I didn't know that's what the folder meant. Not yet. All I knew was her name was Bree. She was 24, and my manager said she was just here to shadow you for a few weeks, get familiar with the account processes. I trained her for 6 weeks. I taught her everything I knew. Every client relationship I'd spent 3 years building, I handed to her on a silver platter, one afternoon at a time. Then, on a Friday, I got called into HR and told my position was being restructured. Bree kept her job. I didn't. But this story doesn't end in that HR office. It ends 8 months later, in a conference room across town, with my old boss sitting across from me, asking me to save the company that fired me. Let me back up and tell you how we got there. Chapter 1. Me name is Alina Cho. 3 years ago, I took a job as senior account manager at a digital marketing agency called Wren and Holt. Mid-size firm, based in Denver, handling social media and brand strategy for maybe 30 clients at any given time. I was good at my job. Not because I was the loudest person in the room, because I was the most reliable one. Clients trusted me. When something went wrong at 2 in the morning, I was the one who fixed it before the client even woke up. My manager was a man named Grant Feldman, director of client services. Grant had been at Wren and Holt for almost a decade, and he ran his department the way a lot of people run departments when they've been comfortable for too long, by protecting himself first, and everyone else a distant second. For 2.5 years, I didn't think much of Grant one way or another. He wasn't cruel. He was just absent. He took credit in meetings sometimes, sure, but I told myself that's just how agency life works. You do the labor, your boss presents it upward, and eventually, if you're patient, you get your turn. I was patient. I waited. I hit every target. I brought in 2 new clients myself through referrals, which technically wasn't even my job. I trained 3 junior associates who all went on to get promoted past entry level within a year. Then, in March, our biggest account, a regional outdoor apparel brand called Summit Ridge, worth close to $800,000 a year to the agency, had their annual contract renewal coming up. Grant told me I'd be leading the renewal pitch. I spent 5 weeks building it. New brand strategy, a full content calendar redesign, an influencer partnership plan that our creative director called the strongest deck this agency has produced in years. Days before the pitch, Grant called me into his office. "Alina, I need you to walk someone through the account before the meeting," he said. "New hire. She's going to be sitting in on the pitch and I want her caught up." That's when I met Bree. Bree was sharp, I'll give her that, fast learner, confident in a way that read at first like enthusiasm. She asked good questions. She took detailed notes. I liked her honestly in those first few weeks. I remember thinking, if I ever get promoted to a director role myself, I'd want someone like her on my team. I walked her through the entire Summit Ridge account. History, contacts, pricing structure, every internal note about what the client liked and didn't like. I introduced her by video call to their marketing director as someone learning the account alongside me. Replacing me. Learning alongside me. That's the phrase Grant used, and that's the phrase I repeated to myself every time something felt slightly off. The pitch itself went well. Really well. Summit Ridge signed a 2-year renewal at an increased rate. Grant sent an email to the whole department congratulating the team on a fantastic result. He didn't mention me by name. He mentioned Bree by name. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I knew what I'd built, even if Grant didn't say it out. You've ever done the work and watched someone else get the credit in the room? You already know exactly where this story is going. Comment below if this is starting to sound familiar. **** Chapter 2. Over the following month, my responsibilities started shrinking in small, deniable ways. Grant moved 2 of my smaller accounts to Bree, so she can get hands-on experience. He stopped inviting me to certain client calls I'd led for years, saying Bree needed the exposure. He started scheduling one-on-ones with her that used to be mine, at the exact same time slot I used to have. I brought it up with him directly in his office as calmly as I could manage. "Grant, I want to understand what's happening with my workload. It feels like it's shifting pretty fast." He leaned back in his chair, unbothered. "We're just cross-training the team, Alina. You know how agency life is. Everyone needs backup coverage." Doesn't feel like backup coverage. It feels like I'm being replaced. Grant smiled the kind of smile that's meant to make you feel like you're being paranoid. Alina, you're one of our best people. Nobody's replacing you. I just need flexibility across the team. I wanted to believe him. I think some part of me needed to believe him because the alternative was too unsettling to sit with. 2 weeks later, HR called me in on a Friday afternoon. The woman from HR, a kind but clearly uncomfortable person named Patricia, slid a folder across the table. Alina, due to some restructuring in the client services department, your position is being eliminated. We're offering a standard severance package of 4 weeks' pay. Eliminated, I repeated. The position is being eliminated or I'm being eliminated. The role, as it currently exists, is being restructured, she said carefully. Is Bree taking over my accounts? Patricia didn't answer that directly, which was, in its own way, an answer. I sat in my car in the parking lot afterward. The same parking lot I'd pulled into for 3 years, past the same faded Wren and Holt sign, and I thought about every single hour I'd spent training the person who was about to take my desk. Chapter break. I want you to sit with that for a second, because it's a specific kind of cruelty, isn't it? Not just losing your job. Handing someone the exact tools they'll use to replace you, and smiling while you do it, because you don't know that's what's happening, yet Chapter THREI was unemployed for 11 weeks. I applied everywhere. Digital marketing is a small industry, and word travels fast. I later found out Grant had told at least one other agency owner, informally, over drinks, that I'd been let go for performance issues, which was a lie. But it was the kind of quiet, deniable lie that's almost impossible to fight. I finally landed an interview at a smaller, newer agency called Northfield Digital. Different energy entirely. The founder, a woman named Renata Ibarra, had started the company 4 years earlier after leaving a much larger firm herself. I looked into your background, Renata told me in the interview. Summit Ridge renewed with Wren and Holt right around the time you left. That timing is interesting. I built that renewal, I said. I don't know how to prove that to you, but I did. Renata studied me for a moment. I believe you. I've seen this pattern before. It's more common than people think. She hired me as Senior Account Director. Higher title, better pay, and most importantly, a boss who actually listened when I raised concerns. For the first few months, I just focused on rebuilding. New clients, smaller at first, but real relationships, built the right way. I stopped thinking about Wren and Holt almost entirely. Almost. If you've ever had to rebuild your reputation from scratch after someone else's decision, not your own, that's exactly what this next part of the story is about. Stick around because things are about to shift in a way I didn't see coming. Chapter 4. 5 months after I joined Northfield, Renata called me into her office with a strange look on her face. I just got off the phone with someone at Summit Ridge, she said. Their marketing director, do you know her? I do. I worked with her for 2 years. Reached out to us directly. She said Wren and Holt's service has completely fallen apart since some kind of internal shakeup, and she wants to know if we'd be interested in pitching for their account. I sat very still for a moment. What kind of shakeup? I asked. Renata shrugged. She didn't say much, just that their usual point of contact left and the person who replaced her, quote, doesn't seem to understand the account at all. Didn't need her to say the name. I already knew. We won the pitch 6 weeks later. Summit Ridge left Wren and Holt entirely and signed with Northfield Digital, bringing their $800,000 account with them. I found out later, through a former colleague who still worked in the industry, what had actually happened at Wren and Holt after I left. Bree, it turned out, had been good at learning an account when someone else built the foundation and handed it to her. She was not good at running one independently, without 3 years of built-up relationships and institutional memory behind her. Summit Ridge complained repeatedly about missed deadlines, generic content that didn't match their brand voice, and a marketing director who couldn't answer basic questions about the account's history. Within 4 months, 2 more mid-size clients left Wren and Holt for similar reasons. Grant apparently had been quietly moving other experienced staff off of major accounts too, in favor of cheaper, less experienced hires, to pad his department's budget numbers before his annual review. It wasn't just me. It was a pattern, and eventually, patterns catch up with people. Second twist right here. I told you this one had a turn coming. If you're new to this channel and enjoying the story so far, go ahead and subscribe now, because what happens next is the part everyone messages me about. Chapter 5. 9 months after I left Wren and Holt, I got an email that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Grant. Alina, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out because I think there might be an opportunity for us to work together again in a different capacity. Would you be open to a call? I almost didn't respond. Part of me wanted to just delete it and move on with my life, which was, by every measure, going better than it ever had at Wren and Holt. But curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to the call. Grant sounded different than I remembered. Less confident, faster to talk like he was nervous. I'll be direct with you, he said. Things have gotten difficult here. We've lost a few major accounts this year, and the ownership group is considering some significant changes. I know things ended. Complicated between us, but I respect your work, and I wanted to ask if Northfield would be interested in a strategic partnership. Some kind of consulting arrangement to help stabilize a few of our remaining accounts. I sat with that for a moment. The man who had let me train my own replacement, watched me get quietly pushed out, and lied about why I left was now asking me professionally for help. Grant, I said, can I ask you something honestly? Of course. You know, when you asked me to train Bree that she was going to take over my accounts, there was a long pause on the line. It wasn't personal, Alina, he finally said. The department needed to cut costs, and Bree's salary was significantly lower than yours. It was a budget decision, not a reflection of your work. That's not what I asked you, I said. I asked if you knew. Another pause. Yes, he admitted. I knew before I asked you to train her. Want you to sit with that admission for a second, because it's the whole story in one sentence. He knew. He asked me to do it anyway. And now here he was on the phone, needing my help to fix the mess that decision created. Chapter SIXI didn't say yes right away. I told Grant I'd need to discuss it with Renata and think it over, which was true, but honestly, I already knew what I wanted to do. I just needed to figure out how to do it on my terms. Renata, when I told her the whole story, laughed, not unkindly, more in disbelief. You want to know something funny? I'd take that meeting, not to help him, to see his face when he realizes exactly how much leverage you have now. We agreed to take the meeting. Northfield Digital, as the potential consulting partner, walked in with something Wren and Holt desperately needed and couldn't easily replace. Proven, senior-level account expertise at a moment when their reputation in the local market was falling apart. The meeting took place in Wren and Holt's own conference room. The same building, the same floor. I walked past my old desk, now occupied by someone I didn't recognize, and felt strangely calm about the whole thing. Grant sat across the table, along with the agency's owner, a man I'd only met a handful of times before, named Douglas Wren himself. Alina, Douglas said, Grant speaks very highly of your work. We're hoping Northfield can help us stabilize a few key accounts while we restructure some things internally. I glanced at Grant. He wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I'm happy to discuss a consulting arrangement, I said. But I want to be transparent about something first, since we're talking about trust and stability. 8 months ago, I was asked to train my own replacement without being told that's what was happening. That replacement was significantly less experienced, and from what I understand, has struggled to retain the accounts I built. I think it's worth understanding how that decision was made before we discuss moving forward. Douglas turned to Grant slowly. Is that true? Grant's face went pale in a way that reminded me honestly of every boss in every story like this one. That specific look people get when a decision they made quietly, assuming no one would ever connect the dots, suddenly has an audience. It was a budget decision, Grant said again, weaker this time. It cost us Summit Ridge, Douglas said flatly, and apparently 2 other accounts based on what you told me last month. Meetings shifted very quickly after that, and not in the direction Grant had planned. If you've ever watched karma arrive slower than you wanted, but arrive exactly on time anyway, that's this chapter. Comment below if you've ever had a moment like this one chapter, Seven we didn't sign the consulting deal that day. Douglas asked for time to review some things internally, which I now understand meant reviewing Grant's decisions over the previous 2 years in much closer detail than he probably ever had before. 3 weeks later, I got a call. Not from Grant, from Douglas directly. Alina, I want to apologize for how things were handled with your departure last year. I've done a full review, and frankly, I didn't like what I found. Grant is no longer with the agency. I felt something settle in my chest hearing that. Not triumph exactly, just a quiet sense that the truth eventually had found its way to the surface. I'd like to formally offer Northfield Digital a consulting retainer to help us rebuild our client services structure, Douglas continued. And honestly, Alina, if you were ever interested in returning in a leadership capacity yourself, the door would be open, on very different terms than before. I thanked him, genuinely. But I told him what I'd already decided, sitting in that conference room weeks earlier. I wasn't interested in going back. Northfield Digital took on the consulting arrangement, at Renata's direction, structured entirely around training Ren and Holt's remaining staff to properly manage their accounts. The right way this time, with full transparency about who was doing the work and who was getting credit for it. I oversaw the arrangement personally, and I made sure every step of the way that every junior associate involved got their name attached to their own work. As for Bree, she actually reached out to me directly a few months into the consulting arrangement. She wasn't defensive. She was honest. I didn't know what was really happening when Grant had me shadow you, she told me. I found out later and I felt terrible about it. I should have said something. I appreciated that she said it. It didn't undo anything, but it mattered, hearing it out loud. Asterisk final twist before we wrap up. I actually ended up recommending Bree for a smaller account role at a completely different agency a few months later, once I understood she'd been used just as much as I had, in a different way. She's doing well there now, from what I hear. Sometimes the story isn't as simple as one villain and one victim. Sometimes it's just a broken system, and people caught inside it making the best choices they can with what they're told. Chapter EIGHTI. Think about that folder Grant handed me a lot. The one where he told me to train my replacement, without telling me that's what it was. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me professionally. Looking back now, it was the moment that pushed me out of a place that never valued me the way I deserved, and into one that did. I don't think everyone gets a story like this one. Sometimes the person who wrongs you never faces consequences. Sometimes you never get the phone call, the apology, the meeting where the truth finally comes out in front of the right people. I know I got lucky in a way that mine worked out this cleanly. But here's what I do believe, no matter how the story ends for you, the work you do is still yours, even when someone else takes credit for it in the moment. It doesn't disappear. It becomes the foundation of whatever you build next, whether the people who wronged you ever find out or not. If you're going through something like this right now, being quietly pushed out, watching someone else get credit for your work, training the person who might be replacing you and not even knowing it yet, I want you to know it doesn't have to be the end of your story either. If this story meant something to you, hit subscribe, because I've got a lot more like it coming. And tell me honestly in the comments, would you have taken that consulting meeting or walked away for good? I really do read every single comment, and I want to know what you would have done. See you in the next one.